Hello and welcome to TimeShift, your go-to channel for exploring alternate realities and diving into the what-ifs of history. Today, we're going to take on a deeply emotional and thought-provoking topic. What if the 9/11 attacks never happened? But before we get into this alternate timeline, I want to take a moment to remember the lives lost on that tragic day. Over 3,000 people lost their lives in the September 11 attacks, and we honor their memory today. Our thoughts and prayers go out to their families, friends, and loved ones who still live with the pain of that loss. Let's not forget the brave first responders, firefighters, police officers, paramedics, who ran into danger to save others. Their courage and sacrifice will never be forgotten. Now, what if it never happened? What would the world look like today if the US government had prevented the attacks? How different would life be in America? What about the global landscape? And how would this affect everything from international relations to technology, freedom, and even our daily lives? Let's dive in and explore. The Averted Attack. Let's start by rewinding the clock to the summer of 2001. Tensions are simmering globally, but in the United States, life feels pretty normal. People are going about their daily routines, enjoying the warm summer days. New York City is bustling, the Twin Towers standing tall and proud in the skyline. The financial district is alive with energy, unaware that a deadly plot is brewing beneath the surface. Now imagine a world where US intelligence agencies catch wind of this plot months in advance. They pick up chatter, terrorist groups planning something big, something catastrophic. But instead of letting the world know, they make a decision. They act quickly, quietly. Special ops teams are deployed, working under the radar to neutralize the threat before it ever reaches the headlines. The attack is thwarted. The masterminds are captured, detained, and interrogated. But here's the twist. The world never knows how close it came to disaster. The US government, alongside powerful global elites, chooses to keep it under wraps. It's decided that announcing the close call could cause widespread panic, damage the economy, and spark political turmoil. So, the headlines we all remember from that fateful day in September 2001, they never exist. The planes never crash into the Twin Towers. The Pentagon is never struck. And a quiet morning in September remains just that, quiet. Life moves on. A world without the wars. But let's take a closer look at what happens next. In this alternate reality, the United States never declares a war on terror. There's no invasion of Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden remains a wanted figure, but without a high-profile attack on US soil, the pressure to hunt him down doesn't have the same urgency. The Taliban remains in power in Afghanistan, but the region avoids the chaos and destruction of a decades-long war. And Iraq? Without the shadow of 9/11, there's no justification for the 2003 invasion. Saddam Hussein remains in power for years to come. There are no weapons of mass destruction claims, no massive military deployments, and no long, drawn-out conflict. The Middle East, though far from peaceful, is not ravaged by US-led interventions. The massive toll of lives lost, both civilian and military, never happens. Now imagine how different global politics would be. In the real world, the war on terror reshaped US foreign policy. America poured trillions of dollars into wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Thousands of US troops lost their lives. Tens of thousands more were wounded, both physically and mentally. Entire regions were destabilized, leading to the rise of extremist groups like ISIS. But in this alternate timeline, that's not the case. The US avoids these costly, divisive wars. The political landscape at home is different too. Without the fear and trauma of 9/11, there's no Patriot Act. Civil liberties aren't eroded in the name of national security. Airports don't adopt the strict, invasive security measures we now take for granted. There are no mass surveillance programs like PRISM, no large-scale data collection on US citizens. Instead, America continues down a path of relative freedom, privacy, and individual rights. The global power shift. But while America seems to continue on a peaceful path, the global balance of power begins to shift. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Without the distraction of long, drawn-out wars in the Middle East, the United States government and military remain focused on other global issues. But so do other nations. And in the early 2000s, one country in particular is already poised to rise to global prominence: China. In our real timeline, the United States was heavily involved in the Middle East, pouring resources into Afghanistan and Iraq. China, meanwhile, used this period to strengthen its economy, build its infrastructure, and expand its global influence. By 2020, China was already challenging the United States in terms of economic power and political clout. But in this alternate timeline, with the United States less distracted by foreign wars, the balance shifts more slowly. China still grows in power, but the United States remains more focused on maintaining its global leadership. The two countries don't clash as quickly. There's no immediate trade war, no rapid escalation of tensions. Instead, there's a slow, simmering rivalry, a new Cold War of sorts, but one that develops more gradually over decades, rather than being accelerated by 9/11 and its aftermath. Russia, too, takes a different path. In the real world, post-9/11 politics saw Russia strengthening its position in the global arena, especially in regions like Syria. But without United States interventions in the Middle East, Russia's influence in the region isn't as necessary or as prominent. The global chessboard is still complex, but the pieces are moving in a different direction. The conspiracy behind the scenes. But what about behind closed doors? While the world seems to have avoided the horrors of 9/11 and its aftermath, something darker is happening in the shadows. In our timeline, the events of 9/11 justified an expansion of government surveillance and control. The Patriot Act, PRISM, and other programs were all launched in the name of protecting national security. But in this alternate reality, where the attacks never happen, those same forces don't simply disappear. Instead, they evolve. Imagine this. Powerful tech companies, intelligence agencies, and global elites still want control. They still want to monitor, track, and influence. But without the pretext of 9/11, they have to find new ways to justify it. So they use other crises, real or manufactured, as excuses to push their agenda forward. In the early 2000s, a major tech mogul, someone with the ambition to reshape the world, seizes the opportunity. They launch a massive data collection initiative, supposedly to improve security and efficiency. At first, it's framed as a way to make life more convenient. Smarter cities, better traffic management, faster, more personalized services. But over time, it becomes clear that this initiative is about much more than convenience. It's about control. Your phone calls, your internet searches, your social media activity, everything is tracked, stored, and analyzed. Algorithms determine what you see, what you buy, even how you think. Privacy becomes a thing of the past. The world becomes more and more like a digital panopticon, where every move is watched. In this alternate reality, it's not government agencies, but tech companies that take the lead in surveillance. And they're doing it with the backing of global elites, all working together to consolidate power in a few hands. The world becomes increasingly dystopian, as freedoms slowly slip away in the name of progress and innovation. The CIA agent's discovery. But not everyone is content to let this happen. Imagine a lone CIA agent, someone who was part of the original mission to stop the 9/11 attacks. They've spent years haunted by the decision to keep it a secret. Over time, they begin to question the motives of those in power. Why did the government choose to cover up the attack? What are they hiding? And what are the tech companies really doing with all that data? Driven by their conscience, the agent begins to dig deeper. They sift through classified files, follow the money trails, and piece together a terrifying conspiracy that stretches across governments, corporations, and shadowy organizations. What they uncover is chilling. The world's most powerful people have been working together for years, using crises, real and invented, to justify an ever-expanding surveillance state. And now, they're poised to take control of the future. But the agent knows they're up against nearly insurmountable odds. With every step they take, they're watched. Every file they access, every conversation they have, it's all being monitored. They're racing against time, trying to expose the truth before it's too late. The new threat. Meanwhile, while the world's attention is focused on tech giants and global power plays, another threat is growing in the shadows. The terrorist groups that planned the original 9/11 attacks have not disappeared. Though their initial plot was foiled, they've spent the years since